Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's class. I believe that this React Redux series has been quite interesting so far. It has really given you guys I know people have been on it for a while now. So we thought that, or should I say, in the wisdom of the project manager, we thought we should trash a little bit of Redux again, at least to make sure that you guys are like super solid on Redux before we move on to other things. Is that okay? Do we like that? Are we together? All right, okay. So what we are going to do is just take some, we'll just utilize Redux in maybe like do new examples. Okay, so like our last class, we were able to handle team changes, team toggling, right? And then we were also able to handle create a counter application or a counter component, which we controlled the states using Redux. Okay, so today we'll look at some other scenarios where we can apply Redux just to broaden your horizon to see how much you can actually manipulate or utilize Redux. Are we together? Are we good? No one's responding. Okay, all right. So let's carry on then. Yeah. Okay, so for today, we'll still work with the overview page, but this time let's just remove all this code. Okay, let's remove just the text code. Let's remove this for now. Okay, let's keep this empty for now so that we can. Okay, all right. So what we want to do now is create a slice to handle to simulate authentication, right? So basically, you understand from the work people have been doing, you have done two authentication forms so far using what they call it, hold on.
Firebase.
Yeah, Firebase. Thank you so much. So yeah, you've done that using Firebase. So you pretty much understand the whole concept of payload. That is passing data to your API call, right? Even utilizing it um, inside of your Redux slice, right? So let's just do a little example utilizing an hot slice for Redux. So let's create first our hot slice. Digest. Okay. All right. Normally we import our create slice. Okay. Redux toolkit, and then we can go ahead and create our slice. Okay. Now let's call this slice hot, and then for our initial state, let us have this hot false. So what we are saying here is for this authentication, we want to check if the person is authenticated, right? And if the person is authenticated, if the person is not authenticated, which should be the initial state normally, it's this is odd, is false, right? So if we now want to add a user information to, okay. So now that we've added the user information, we have our initial state. We can now check the auth state of the user, and then we can also update the user information based on which user is getting logged in, correct? Now let's go on and create a login reducer, right? So for our login, we want to check the state, and then we want to pass payload to the actions. Okay. Now let's say state.auth. So remember that we are updating this state here. So we say state dot is auth, is equals to true. So that is when you trigger this login, you want the state to be equals to true. Okay. Okay. So we can now add state dot user, and for user we want to add the payload, action dot payload for the user that we want to log in. Okay. Are we together so far? Are we together? All right. So now that we have, so basically you want to understand one thing, that this action payload, right, is assuming this login action now was an actual API call, right? We'll be attaching the user info that we'll be getting from our API to this user data. So we are picking the payload from the action that has been taken, whatever payload was added for the user, and attaching it and changing the state of user here. So initially we have null. When this login is triggered and we have added the user info to the payload, that payload action is utilized to update this user state. So now if we say okay, let's just go ahead. We'll see it in action. Then let's say log out, and then we want to do the same thing we did here, but this time the reverse. So in this case now we want to log the person out. And when we click on when we trigger this log out, when we dispatch this log out, we want to update the is auth state to false. So we are telling the application that we are logging this person out. At the same time, we are also removing the person's information by updating this user, uh, the value of this user to null. Okay. All right. So now that we have this slice created, we can now export what we need and then go ahead and utilize it in our application. Okay. So remember, you are picking the actions, you're exporting the actions, and then you're exporting the reducer itself. Okay. Now remember, after creating this, after doing all this, you want to go to store and add that reducer to store. Okay. So if we come here, can now say theme dot auth reducer, and then all right. So we have our auth reducer imported now. Okay. So let's save this and go ahead and utilize this auth reducer in our application. So if we come to overview now, and let's say we want to access, we want to check the state of our authenticated user, right? And we also want to trigger the action of logging in and logging out from this point in our application, right? What we do, instead of coming here, so we are getting it from auth, right? So what we saved it as in the store is auth. So we are checking the store now for our auth section or auth category, right? To pick out some tools that we want to utilize here. So we are looking at bringing the auth. Let's to be sure we have our spelling correct. So we want to have this. And then we want to have user. Yeah. All right. Are we good? Are we following? All right. So now remember that we have imports, we have login action and logout action, correct? So let's bring our login from our auth slice and also bring in our logout from our auth slice, okay? So now we have our actions imported and we also have our states. Okay, yeah, Udo, that's fine. You can always watch the class again, but we have not gone so far. Basically, what we have done is create our auth slice, and then we are bringing in what we need, which is the login action, logout action, and our state, initial state, okay? So that's what we have here and here. So now we can go ahead and write some code, okay? So if, let's say we want to check for is auth, and then we want to say when this is auth is true, okay? We want to display welcome user dot name, okay? Then within this particular section, we want to add a button that we will use to log our user out, and then we will pass an on-click to it. Now for this on-click, we want to trigger our dispatch, okay? So we'll dispatch logout here, okay? And then we can close this. Hold on. So let me ask a question. Who knows why we have this issue here? Why are we having this warning issue here? Somebody just raise your hand and then speak. Nobody. Okay.
Can I speak?
No, we passed that. It's fine. Come on.
It's
No, we can.
So my hand was raised now.
Your hand was raised. Okay, go ahead, Udo. If your hand was raised, go ahead.
Okay, so it's a ternary expression. We've already said that if it is odd, and then we put the block of code in a parenthesis. Now we didn't give the else, that's if else, that's if it's not. We didn't now give the colon. We didn't put colon before the expression.
Okay. Okay,
That
so
is if
basically,
it's not hot or something.
okay,
I don't know if I answered it well.
nobody's wrong in my class. Thank you for that excellent attempt. Yes, there are errors that are popping up because of that very reason, okay? But the particular error that I was talking about was this one. This one that makes the P tag red and the button red. So, Josh, let's hear from you too before.
So the ternary operation is not complete, like you said. We just have the if the is ought is true to display this whole
Okay. Okay,
and then
so
this the
yeah,
button, and also the curly braces have not been
uh,
closed yet.
so basically, if I close these curly braces now, from what you guys have said, that means our code should be okay, correct? We still have this error. Udo, is this new or you want to, you raise your hand again?
So sorry, let me. I think I saw the issue.
Okay,
So like it's meant to return one JXS. Well, you see the error is not writing it. It has to return one JXS. So it has to be wrapped up in deep in one element, probably what they call it fragment.
okay.
In a
So,
tag or fragment.
okay. So yeah, so that's what I just wanted people to like say, right? Because most of these things like core understanding of what's going on. So it's good to like have that core understanding of what's really going on in the code so that when you have issues, you don't beat around the bush. You don't know, okay, this is what I was supposed to do and I didn't do it, right? So yeah, yes, it should always like there should be a singular parent for all of them. They can't stand individually inside here. Okay. So thank you for that. Yeah, and thank you, Emmanuel. I saw that you were also responding in the text box. All right, let's go on. So we have our login and our logout, okay? And then remember that for login, we want to pass a payload to login, correct? And that payload is what we want to use to update the user properties, right? So now what I've done here is giving the user a name and an age, okay? So if we trigger this login, it should update, the user information to contain a name value and an age value, okay? So let's look at this in our browser and see what we have, okay? Let's save this and then check the browser. All right. So we have our login button, which is this. So ideally on default, that is initially, this is odd, is always falsy, right? Because you need to authenticate first before it's truthy, okay? So basically, once we add these values to our dispatch our login using these values, we should be able to now have this is odd to be truthy, and then also have the value user.name. Okay, so if we come here and click on login, you see that we have welcome John Doe, and we also have logout button. Now it doesn't display this other side. Okay, so now we have combined both, Redux to manage our states and handle our actions. And then we've also utilized conditional rendering to show what the user should see when the user is logged in and what the user should not see when the user is logged in. Okay, so if we come here now and click on logout, it removes that user information that we added from here. So we can, you don't necessarily have to do this because you can use input fields to collate your data from the browser, okay? And then you can now log in. So I believe that's clear for everybody. Is there anything that you don't understand in what we just did before we move on to the next? Excuse me, let me have some water. All right, Josh, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Sorry, I think I got distracted a bit, but I didn't see the stuff log out. I don't know. It seems like you said something concerning it. Can you come again?
Yeah, so basically what I say is right now, if I click on login, you see that our user has been logged in. And if I click on logout, the user has been logged out.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, so it's actually taking the actions that we've designed in our reducer, okay?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's doing what we've designed here. So it's updating the state. When we log in, it updates the state to true and it updates the user information with whatever payload we pass, right? Likewise, when we click on logout, it updates the is odd to false and also removes the user data from here. Okay. Yeah, so Excel, you have a question. You can unmute and ask your question.
Okay. Can you hear me? Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Please, can you go to that store? Can you go to yes, the store?
Mhm. Mhm.
All this your line 8 to line 10, the value of counter, count reducer, team reducer, auto reducer. I don't know where are they coming from.
Okay, I get your confusion. So they are your actual slices that you created. So you can, because they are actually reducers, as you see counter reduce, because they're actually reducers, that's why we name them as reducers. I can name it as counter slice. Do you follow? I can
Yes,
name
sir.
it as counter slice, which is the name that we have already here. Okay? And move it here, and it will still do the same actions. So the name I'm giving is just like okay, so when you import an image, do you necessarily name the image the name that was like the title that you gave to the image in your directory?
No, no.
Exactly. Does it change the image behavior? No, right? So basically, this is what's important. What you are importing is what's important, not the name. So don't get yourself confused. Why we name this counter reducers? Because these are actually reducers. Do you get me? Are we clear?
Yes, sir. So it was mute.
You're clear now, okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we can go ahead, move our view. Okay. So now you've seen what logout login pretty much looks like. So you are definitely just within your slice where you're handling your reducers, you are pretty much just defining the actions, right? And then for those actions, you are updating your state. So ideally, what you are doing is take an action, update the state. So you want to handle all your actions inside Redux. Allow Redux to handle all your actions so that Redux can also manage the state by himself. Okay. So basically, you don't need to you don't need to repeat any of this logic that I've written here anywhere. All you need to do is import these actions and utilize them, or import the states and utilize those states to manipulate your display whichever way you deem fit. Yeah, Josh, your hand is up.
So sorry, please can you go to where we utilize this stuff? Let me check something.
Overview. Okay.
So here, right? Uh,
Sorry.
was it just initialized in this when you are calling the dispatch, like your dispatch login? Because initially, like I remember that in the login, what we just had there was we had user no, is hot no, and user like just the two variables. But here
Yeah.
it seems like everything was initialized while calling the dispatch.
So I already explained this. So what I did here is to pass an object, a user object, to the login as my payload to the login action. Remember that
Oh,
we're expecting a payload here.
yeah,
Do you understand?
yeah,
We're
yeah.
expecting a payload here in our login logic. So we have an action, and for the action that we are taking, we want to pick the payload and attach that payload to the user object. So we want
Yeah.
to, yes, so we are pretty much updating this user with that object. So let's assume that you were using a form, right? Assume it was a form. You'll be picking the form data. Now, what you will attach to this login will be that form data.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, as there is no there is nothing that's been defined yet. I can just put up any object of my choice, right? At
Yes,
this
yes,
point.
as it is, right? So, when you start writing TypeScript and you start defining things a little bit uh, more, you might now find yourself in a situation where you want to specify what this user data should look like. Do you understand? So in that
Yes,
case
sir.
now, don't put a default null now. So maybe you want the user information to actually be an object that should only contain name and age.
Okay.
Are you
Okay.
following?
Yes, sir.
Good. Now, in this case, now in this scenario, now you have already defined the structure of your user information. So if you come into your code and you are passing a payload of um of height, you are wasting your time because this height cannot go into this login because that's not what this login is expecting. Are we together?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Not expecting name and age. Yeah. But keeping it open by adding just no, by putting no is a simple way of allowing it to receive any form of data. So I can still pass only the age, right? And if I want to display here, I'll have to display only age because that's the only thing that will be available in the data. You follow? So if I log in, you see only age, welcome 30. Uh, are we together? Any other person has a question? Any question on this so that we can move on? Now, don't forget when I teach like this, I'm teaching like basics, right? It's left to you to explore the documentations. There are a lot of things you can do with Redux. Explore the documentations and see for yourself how you can do more with Redux. Okay, so let's take another example just to broaden our horizon. Uh, so let's look at what do we look at next? Let's see how we can handle an inventory cart and checkout. Okay. I think we'll still use this particular component, so we'll just take this out for now. Yeah. All right, so let's create a new slice for our inventory. Let's call it inventory slice. Just now, Josh, to that question you asked, best practice is to actually define the structure of your object. Okay, so endeavor to define the structure of your objects when working on it. At least I've shown you how to do it, right? All right. Because at least in your case, you know what you're expecting already. I'm not using any API. I'm just simulating these actions, okay? So in your case, you know what you're expecting, you know the kind of data you want to utilize, you know what you're getting for the user. So you can pretty much define your user object. So let's call it inventory, and then our initial state should contain products, or, and then for products, we want to have an array of products. Okay, so let's go with a more, let's say shoe. Let's call it shoe. Then let's call this hat, and let's call this shirt. Okay, so we have three products in our cart. Okay, so we have three products in our cart, and we want to be able to access these products, and then we want to be able to add them to our cart. Like we have them in our inventory rather, and then we want to be able to add them to our carts. Okay, so our first product is shoe. We've given it an ID, a name, and price, right? So this is $100, this is 200, and this is 150. Okay, so now we go ahead and create start with our reducers. So the first action we want to look at is our add to cart. Okay, now for add to cart, what do we want to do? Check the state and action. Remember that when you want to add something to cart, that it's like passing a payload, correct? Correct, everyone? Yeah, okay. So we can go ahead and say const item is equals to the present state dot products dot find. So what we are doing is we want to find the product that that's been selected. So let's assume that we select a particular product. You want to check through the products to find the product that has the ID of the product that was selected. That is the ID that was selected. And then we want to pick the payload, that is pick the details of that particular product. And then we can now add it. So we want to say if the item exists, we want to state.cart.push. We want to add it to the cart. Okay? Are we together? I need some people. Can you respond, please, so that we can move on? All right, so we're together so far. Excellent. Okay. So now we can now create our checkout. Checkout. And then for checkout, you know what we are going to do now. Just basically, at least for this, we're just simulating, right? So basically, we want to empty our cart, right? So we look into the states, and then we say state.cart should be equals to an empty array. Are we good? Are we still together? All right. So you can go ahead and write your remove from cart action and blah blah and all that, But we'll just work with our add to cart for now. So we can now go ahead and close out this reducer and then go ahead to export first our action, right? And then export our inventory slice. Okay? All right. Are we good? Now we have our initial states. So remember that for this now, our initial state has content in it already, okay? So let's assume that you are getting this data from a backend. You would have done your API call already. Then within these products, you will be passing the actual data coming from your API here. So we are simulating that data coming from your API with this particular array, okay? All right. Then, like as you can see, we have our add to cart, which I explained earlier. We are going through this state, right, to find the particular product that has been selected. And if the product exists, that is, if the ID exists, we want to, if it is equal to the payload, that is, if this product dot ID exists inside here. Do you understand? That is, if the ID that's coming from the payload that was selected matches any of the IDs inside here, we want to select it as our item. And then for that item, we want to, if the item actually exists, we want to push that item into our cart array. Okay? So let's go ahead and utilize it in our component so we can see what it looks like in real time. So nobody reminded me to import to our store. Inventory, okay. Let's go ahead and import from inventory. All right. Okay, now that we have that imported, we can go ahead and utilize our actions and states inside inside our component, okay? So we have our add cart, and we are taking this from our cart. No, we save that as inventory, not cart, okay? So we're taking it from our inventory. All right. Okay, so what we just did now is totally wrong. Yeah, that's better. This should be our state. Hold on, I'll be with you. I'll answer that question. But I'll need you to unmute and ask that question anyways. So this is what we are picking from here. So we want the product and we want the cards. Okay. All right. So basically, I think let's visualize what the card looks like at the moment. So that lot of product and cards, and then we save. We should have an empty array for product, and then we should have 3 products, an empty array for cards, and then we should have 3 products in the product array. Good. So we have our shoe, we have our hat, and then we have our shirts. Okay, so let's take that question. Mohammed, can you unmute, please, and ask your question? I think your question is here, so.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Carry on.
My question, I'm just asking basically that what's the difference between action.payload and action.payload.id, and which is better to use?
Okay, so basically there's no difference because you're basically checking the ID of the payload, right? Remember? And then when you are passing this payload now, ideally in this scenario, the payload will be passing will be just the ID of the product. Do you understand? So when looking at it, you're looking at what exactly are you expecting in this action that you are creating. So what we are checking for here is just the product ID. We don't even require other information from the product. All we want is the product ID. So when I'm passing the payload, I'm going to be passing the product ID itself. Now, assuming I am not specifying only the product ID as in my payload now, right? Say maybe I want to pass the whole object, the whole of this object now, right? That is when I can say payload.id, because now I need to pick the ID inside this payload. So I'm not checking the whole payload in this case now, which is the whole of this uh, object, right? I want to check just the ID in this object. So I'm not going to say payload.id. But in a scenario where I'm passing only the ID, I'll just put payload, because what I'm expecting is what I'm sending. So I don't need to access deeper, because the only thing I need is what I am sending. So I think you understand it better once we start working on this. So let me go ahead, and don't worry, I'll get back to you. I'll ask you if you understand when we do what we have to do next, okay? So now we
Okay.
have our products and our cards, right? And then we want to, let's have the H1 tag here. Let's say H2, say products, okay? So we can differentiate between our products and our cards, okay? And then let's have another H2 here. another H2 for cat. Okay. So now we can go ahead and add our products. So now remember that our product is an array. So we want to map through that array. We pick all the products, right? So we'll say the map products. And then let's have a div. And for this div, we want to pass our product ID as a key. Okay. And then let's have a span where we have our product name. So I think we should have our product name and the price. Okay. Product name and the price. All right. So now that we have that, we can close our div. Okay. Okay, so now we have our products. Okay, so if we look at our browser, we should be able to see all our products. So products, we have shoe, 100 naira. Let's say, let's add a dollar sign here. Okay. Good. So you say shoe is $100, hat is $200, and shirts $150. Okay. Now I want a situation where if we handle our on click within here, we should be able to dispatch our action add to cart for each of the products. Okay. So if we are with this now, let's align this. Okay. So with this now, we are now dispatching this action, right? And remember what I talked about when you asked that question with regards to the payload.id, right? You see that over here, I'm passing just the product ID. Yeah, exactly. So I'm passing only the product ID here. So in essence, what I've done here is I'm mapping through. So let's display this and just see what it looks like. Okay. So now you can see that for each product, we have a button, add to cart. For each product, we have an add to cart button, right? For each product, we have an add to cart button. Now, clicking on each of these buttons should update the cart state and add that product to the cart. Okay. At the moment, if I click on this, you see that our products still remain 3, correct? But now our cart has 1 product in it now, as you can see. Our cart now has 1 shoe. Okay. If I click on this add to cart again, you see that our product will now have 2 shoes. Are we following? Are we together? Yes, because what we are passing is the same ID that we have passed to our add to cart function. So as far as that ID exists in our cart, right, it is always going to add that very product to that cart. Okay. Let's go ahead and display our cart content, okay, so that we can see what it looks like too. So let's first of all check our cart to make sure that So make sure that it has content in it to avoid throwing errors in scenarios where it doesn't. Okay. So if we say length, cat.length, and then we want to check if the cat is empty. If the length of the cat is 0, then we want to display an empty state. Okay. So we want to display an empty state by saying if the length of the cat is 0, we want to display an empty state saying your cat is empty. Okay. And then if the cat content, I like uniformity. If the cat content is has a product in it, we want to map it and display it over here. Okay. So now if we come back to our cat, because we've already added those cat details into our, so now there's an issue. As you can see here, 2 children with the same key ID. Okay. So now when handling this add to cart now, you want to give each product that you've added to cart, you want to be able to give that product a new ID. Are we together? Yeah, so you can give that product a new ID so that you don't have this, you don't see this error. This error is saying that we are mapping through, because we are mapping through this particular array, right? The IDs should be unique. One product should not have the same ID with another product within this cart, within the this cart mapping that we've done here. Is that clear? Can explore that on your own. Yes, of course, you should resolve that in the slides. Definitely when you are adding to cart. Okay. So you can do like an update first, then add to cart. So I still have one example here. So we are just going to, you explore that in your own time. Okay. So now that we have this, if I now add to cart, you can see that hat has been added, and then I can add shirt, and shirt has been added. Okay. Are we good? Yeah, so exactly. So yeah, you're already getting the whole concept. So you can feel free to explore how to utilize this thing. You can manipulate the quantity of the product. That way, in fact, if it's the same product, you can even manipulate. You don't need to like continuously map and add. Like you don't need to continuously add that product, as another member of that array. You can, as another object of the array, you can just increment the number of quantities that has been added to that particular product, to the cart for that particular product. You understand? Are we good? Yeah, okay, cool. Excellent. All right. So let's go ahead and do just one more example before we call it a day. So I hope so far things are beginning to look a little brighter for you guys with the whole Redux thing. Okay, excellent. Awesome. Okay. So we'll look at one more example, and then feel free to get your hands dirty with these things. There's so much you can do with it. So don't limit yourself by just sitting back and relaxing. Okay. Mm. All right. So let's create a notification function. Okay. So let's call it notification slice .js. Yeah, it depends on how you look at it though. If you look at it as being tough, it will be tough for you. If you look at it as something that you can conquer, you will conquer it. Okay, so we have our inventory slice, create slice, and then okay, so we have this is not supposed to be inventory. It's supposed to be notifications. Okay. Mm, and it's here. Okay. All right. So our next step will be to create our reducers, initial states. So for this, we are going to give our initial state as an empty array. Then we can now say add notification. Add notification, and then for notification, we want to do state dot push. And then for ID, we want to generate random ID using the date.now. Okay. And then we want to pass message from our, okay. So we can also pass a message type, and we can also type the state of that message if it has been read or if it has not been read. Okay. So now, if we come here, now that we've created this, we've done this logic here. So in essence, what we're trying to say is we'll be passing a payload of message, right? We'll be passing a payload. And for the payload, we want to access the message, message, the message value, right? Okay, and then we want to also update the type of message, which is info, right? And then we also want to update this read state. Okay, so hold on, guys. All right. So with this now, we should be able to create our notification, add our notification, and then let's undo clear notification. And for this, all we want to do is return an empty array. Okay. Hold on, guys. Mm. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's go on. So we have our clear notification written out, and then we want to now go ahead and export what we need, right? So basically, we want export our actions, then we want to also export the slice, okay? What's this? All right, so we have everything exported. So we want to go ahead and import this into our store. Notification, blah, blah. No. Okay. Okay. All right. So we have our slice. All right. So now after importing this, hold on, guys. Okay. All right, let's go on. So now that we have this done, right? So remove the states from here. Okay. So now that we have this done, we can now go ahead and we've imported this, so we can go ahead and utilize this in our overview screen. Okay, so we'll not do too much of removing from here so that we don't need to write too much. So let's just take this out and remove this. This too. Okay. So now we have two buttons here. So let's remove this too. This. All right. Not even sure I need this. So let's just have two buttons here. And for each of them, we want to name them clear notification, clear all, and then we want to give this add notification. Okay. So now for our notification, remember that we need to import our actions, and we also need declare notifications. So let's just take them. Okay. All right. Now we have our actions. We can go ahead and bring in our notification. I'll go ahead and bring in our notifications now. So we say notification slides, and we want to look at our notifications. Okay. All right, so now if we put these notifications here, we should have an empty. All right, let's be sure that we don't have issues over here. This code will be problematic, so let's remove this. Do we still have add to cart here? Okay, all right. Let's see. All right, so unknown cart is not defined. Okay, so let's also remove this. Let's just comment this out for now to avoid errors, and we can go back. Okay, so we have our add notification and clear notification here, right? And over here, you can see that we have an empty array. So notifications ideally now is just an empty array until it has been updated. Okay. Now, if we pick add notification, the action for add notification, and then we update here and give it a message. So basically, let's say we want to pass both the message and so let's say and I want to have message, and then we want to have type. Okay, so I believe that's what we're expecting there. Message and type. Okay, so we're already giving our notifications the default IDs at the point of creation. Okay, so we can now go ahead and send this as our payload. When we trigger our add notification, we should be able to have our message and the type. So let's go ahead and test that out. So if we click on add notification, what do we get? We get an object containing the ID, the message, right? And the type of notification. Are we following? All right, so we can also now add our clear notification, okay? And what should happen here now is whenever we trigger clear notification, we should empty that array again. Okay? Now let's go ahead and display the notifications. So let's just use so let's notifications, which is this. We also want to check. Let's call these notifications. And then we also want to check if notification is empty before we go through the process of mapping it, so that we avoid errors with regards to when the notification does not exist. Okay, so now we have let's have two here so that we can display We can display notification.message, and then we can also display the type of notification. Then we also use the ID as our key. Okay. So now that we have this, if we come to our browser, we should be able to see no notification, since the last action we did was to clear our notification, right? So if I add notification now, okay, so there's a $sign hanging in there. This, okay. So if, yeah. Okay, so that we can see, have a little bit, have it clearer. Okay, so we have our message, and our message says this is a new notification, right? And then we have the type and it's info. Okay, if we clear it, we lose that notification. Okay, we can add it, we can add newer notifications. So when doing something like this now, every message is going to be different, generic, right? Based off the kind of message that you are passing as, or the content you're passing to your message and type. Okay. With this now, you can easily add your notification and also clear your notification. You can also delete your notification based on their ID. Okay, so you can actually add a delete function. Yeah, a remove function. And then for that remove function, you can remove each, you don't need to, instead of, maybe let's assume you don't want to clear the whole of your notification, right? You want to remove one by one. You can actually add an action to remove the notification, and then you can have that attached to each notification so that when you click on it, it automatically removes that very notification based on its ID. Okay. So I believe we all followed so far. All right, no, Emmanuel, don't worry, we're almost done. We're actually done. So I believe we all followed so far. And yeah, like Emmanuel has said, you can go back and watch this video. The main purpose of this video or of this class is because we wanted to like help you see other scenarios where this Redux is being used, right, to manage state. That way it will help you understand better and make you a little bit more creative with what you need to do, especially with regards to the tax. So thank you everyone for joining today's class, and I hope to see you guys in our next class. Bye everyone.